So if everyone is ready, she'll just get started, right? So welcome everyone to the fintech session of this event, specifically about transforming international payments. I am very happy to have a really good panel here. I'll introduce myself quickly and then I'll introduce the panelists. I am Hugo Stevens, managing partner of Aspire Capital. We make investments in technology companies in Mexico and the UK. And I'm really happy to host this really interesting group of people, right? I will introduce them very quickly, and then they can mention in case they want to add something to their profiles, and then we'll get started with the questions we have prepared, right? Super. So with us we have Jose Ivers Lopez. He's the country manager for UK and Ireland of RIA Financial. Hi, Jose.
Hello, hi.
We have Pavel Guzminov, who's the CEO of Digito.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Pavel. We have Harold Montgomery, who's the managing director of Wirex in the US.
Hi.
Hi, Harold.
Hi.
And we have Or Paran, who oversees he oversees business development and partnerships for dLocal. Hello, Or.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here, everyone. So we have a good session ahead, but we might as well just get started, right? For the first question, I would like to answer all the panelists. You can respond in whichever order you prefer. But of course, the main thing we would like to hear is what are the main opportunities you see in the payment sector at the moment, at this moment in time? There's been a lot of changes technologically, also, of course, with the pandemic, politically, everywhere. So lots of things are changing. What's good about this? What are the opportunities that we can take advantage of?
Well, let me start let's kick off. From our side, I mean, RIA, we are part of a bigger enterprise called Euronet. So it's not only the family remittance, and by the way, today is the International Day of Family Remittance. So happy Family Remittance Day. It's just about payments in general. So LATAM is absolutely the market for us, the natural market in terms of growth as well. In terms of opportunities, for us, it's pretty much to do with infrastructure and adoption of these technologies by our users. So from the RIA perspective, it's a family remittance, so sending money from the UK to different countries in LATAM. The higher level of infrastructure in there, in the ground, the more adoption of new technologies, the more use of smartphones, the access to the internet, a massive impact for us. So that means that it's going to be exponentially. The more that we grow in terms of usage of technology in Latin America, the bigger as well for our kind of businesses. Obviously, everything is moving digital from the, let's say, the sending side, but if you have the receiving side as well digitalized, I think that will make a massive impact, a room for the growth in that.
Perfect. Just a very quick follow-up. Would you say, is this driven by trends that were already going on? Is it driven by the changes over the last year? What would be the biggest driver?
For us, I mean, obviously the acceleration on COVID, that's out of the question. Everyone is basically moving into this new digital world in there. For us, is more how we educate people receiving money about the different options to do so. So this mobile wallet evolution is something that definitely is going to be driven by that. Investment in technology means that the value in company like ours, that is not pure digital, so you need to have a point of sale to pay for this particular transaction. That's critical. It's been this investment for many years in Latin America. Now what we're doing is we're using this network to help governments to onboard potential customers. So in many cases, you have the issue where the government doesn't have a proper census, or they have the way to know in remote villages how many people live there, or to be able to quantify that. we get access to this data through a remittance data. So that's an important part in there. More than infrastructure, building towers in there to give Wi-Fi to everyone. I think it's more in that sense of data collaboration projects with basically governments.
Perfect. Anybody else? Going to the original question, what are the main opportunities that are available at the moment?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a stab at that. Thank you, Hugo. I think there are a number of factors that we see as kind of a general trend. We see increased adoption of e-commerce and online modes of payments. So dLocal, we are a payment platform, a 360 payment platform, and our focus is emerging markets as a whole, but we are a Uruguayan-based and headquartered company. That our first country was Brazil, so obviously our bread and butter is LATAM, and we definitely see significant growth for global merchants and due to this adoption of e-commerce and online modes. So this is one. Second, I think that the rise of digital economy in general is significantly helpful as an opportunity. It's also fueled by the accessibility of internet and adoption of smartphone e-commerce in both developing market and emerging markets as well. But we see year-over-year growth of around 25 to 35% of e-commerce in the emerging markets. Another trend, I think that from a point of view, is the consumer expectations. Consumer expectations are to have everything immediate and everything super easy. So they want to make purchases or receive funds if they are a kind of part of this shared or gig economy, and they want to receive funds anytime, anywhere, using their preferred method of payment. They want everything to be super easy because it's really easy to switch from one provider to another when we're talking about e-commerce. So if a specific merchant is not offering my preferred payment method, then I would easily jump to a different provider. So having a local kind of viewpoint on the payment landscape is significant from our point of view. I think
sorry.
So go ahead.
No, it was just a very, very specific follow-up question. We had a question from the audience asking about in Latin America, how is it working?
Maybe
web versus mobile?
I can continue with our company. So what
go ahead, Pablo,
is doing and what is Digido. So basically, I agree completely with what you said just before. And basically, Digido was created precisely for that. So this is basically next generation worldwide payment infrastructure. And we work for banks, businesses, and customers. And this is really a very, very simple system. So we started with a slightly different problem. We started with fraud. Because mostly our customers and our clients, our corporate clients, struggle from fraud. And as a result, we basically decided that we need to develop a very reliable system for payments. This related for both for domestic and cross-border payments. So as a result, we using AI, we built system that near completely eliminate fraud. And using this tool, we were able to create infrastructure for ultra low cost, instantaneous domestic and cross-border payments. Basically, this is what we are doing. And we are different from existing providers because in reality, for our payments, we doesn't require that our client has basically card or mobile phone. So we have just two conditions. So we need that a customer should be at a certain point in front of basically authorized device, and the customer must be alive. So just two criteria. That's it, and we believe that it can quite significantly change basically how people make payments in the world.
There is a very good point that it doesn't get talked about enough, but yeah, everything about
that
security and eliminating fraud.
Next.
Yes, it's very important. And yeah, I'm guessing we can talk a little bit more in a moment about how that's being changed, right? Harold, what about you? Opportunities that you see?
Yeah, so briefly, Wirex is an app that allows people to access and manage their cryptocurrency holdings and their fiat holdings through their phone or computer. So it's an easy on-ramp management tool. It is international. We have a footprint in EEA and APAC now. We're about to enter the North American market. We're certainly looking hard at LATAM and watching the adoption.
We don't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Sorry, I'm having technical trouble. Okay.
No worries. We can hear you, Harold.
I can't get the video to work. I apologize. You'll just have to live with the picture. But we're watching the LATAM market and watching markets like Brazil and Argentina where crypto adoption is increasing rapidly, and Honduras as well, where they El Salvador, where they just adopted crypto as legal tender. These are really interesting developments, and I think they're going to upset the international remittance and payments markets in a big way because they're so much more efficient and cheaper than other current conventional means. So we see a giant opportunity in international remittances and international payments using crypto as the footprint and the backbone for it. So I think there's a huge disruption coming in that space.
Great, and that's actually one of the greatest use cases for crypto. So good to hear all that. One quick question question from the audience before we jump into the next bit. It was to Jose. You mentioned it. Well, everyone has mentioned digital. The question is, in Latin America, what you are seeing is how has that evolved? Both in are there any differences in mobile versus web?
Yeah, we see a lot. So in LATAM, you can see countries top of the list on terms of access to the internet. So that's the base to access either web or app or any application in there, plus a different range of, and that where it came the opportunity that I was talking about, use of a smartphone. So that gives you the room. You have a big spectrum in there saying, okay, so many 20 countries in LATAM. So from this level of adoption of technology, meaning having access to a smartphone and having access to the Wi-Fi to connect or any internet service that they can connect in there. So that's a huge range in there. That's the opportunity I was talking about. So I think we need to have a discussion that allow the perfect space for companies, for startups, for solution providers, for talent, thinking about how we can to connect A to B and the rest of the variation in the payment world. So that's why it's a fantastic opportunity in there. For me, it was more infrastructure because for us, our main core business is always cash. We jump into digital. We're doing very well. We're moving basically in a natural way with our customers, adopting the new technologies, and we went to be there, to be in the forefront. We have another company called XC. And my background, I come from XC before RIA, and you can tell. So XC is one of these platforms that they have, 85 million downloads for the app, literally 250 million users. And it's something in there that it happens in a very specific environment. There was the techie, the adoption, the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. The same is happening for many other, let's call it platform or solutions in LATAM. So it's a fantastic starting point, let's say. This is not a short term. This is something like, it's going to take some time, but absolutely the next big thing to happen is going to be LATAM.
Perfect. It's also part of a bigger trend, which is good. So we talked about the opportunities, what's good about what's going on at the moment. Now let's switch to the opposite question. What are some of the challenges that we are facing at the moment? You can respond in any order. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to go ahead on that one. Again, from our perspective, we're very crypto focused, so plenty of challenges there, not least of which are really the different regulatory jurisdictions that you get into and the contradictions that you find between different countries and even sometimes within them. The US, as an example, from a regulatory point of view, is really 50 different countries. So it's easy for outsiders to look at the US and say, oh, that's a big juicy market. But in fact, it's a mosaic of different crypto regulations that make it a challenge. LATAM actually is very attractive because you have single jurisdictions in Brazil, Argentina, and other, Colombia, and other major metropolitan and population centers where you have an increasing awareness of crypto. The leading exchange in Brazil, increased its volume by 5-fold in the first quarter of 2021. So an awareness, an awakening, and conveniently you have governments who are sort of mismanaging their currencies, as you have in Venezuela, which really makes adoption of crypto as a stable currency very attractive. So I would say regulation is number one, awareness and education is number two. Third on the list to me is trust. Consumers have to learn about crypto, then they have to trust the crypto itself and the system that manages it and have confidence that it's really going to work so their money doesn't vanish. And then, of course, you have classic challenges around marketing and market penetration and all that sort of thing.
Good. Who else wants to talk about some of the other challenges we're facing?
Yeah, I'm happy to go with that. So, of course, the fact that it's, especially in LATAM, it's a very fragmented payment landscape with a lot of nuances over there. This is already kind of like a given. And on top of that, we have a highly complex and evolving local regulatory and tax environment. This is actually compounded by an increase in fraud and cyber attacks that we see in the region. Now, you add on top of all of that, the fact that banking penetration can fall below 20% in some of the market in the adult population in emerging markets, and the increase of e-commerce, all of that creates a huge challenge for global merchants that basically are unfamiliar or unaware or unable to handle basically a lot of markets at the same time. In particular, when we're talking about the complexities and the nuances that we have in these markets. Now, local payment method represent 83% of the total e-commerce, which is mind-boggling for people coming from developing markets to understand. The fact is, how can you pay for an online good using a cash payment? So for people who lived in Latin America or currently live over there or are in the industry, it's easy to grasp and understand the concept of OXXO Pay, Boleto Bancario, etc. And then you can simply take that. But it's still a challenge for many kind of companies. And we're talking about a whole range of alternative payment methods, such as cash-based payment methods, digital e-wallets, bank transfer, which are very much in the market. So you add all of these together and you basically you come up with a huge challenge for global merchants to operate in these markets.
I can tell you that I'm reading Harold's mind and he's saying you forgot about crypto. But yes, of course, there is a lot of complexity there, of course.
It is completely correct, and crypto is a challenge, and even more so in emerging markets than in developing markets. It's not the realm of the expertise of the local, so this is not something that we handle on a daily basis. Our goal is basically to support and basically reduce the friction for global merchants to be able to collect payments and make payments in emerging markets and obviously in LATAM as well.
Yeah,
I understand that. Just as a quick example, in Mexico, for example, there's probably, I can think of 20 different payment methods, and I guess that's part of what you do, trying to help manage that complexity, right?
Definitely, and just when we're talking about the markets that we cover, we're talking about over 600 different payment methods. So it's really, really difficult for us coming from developing markets kind of to grasp this kind of level of nuances and the different kind of option customization and option to localize in this market. So obviously it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to do better and customize your offering to the local audience.
Let me just jump in.
Oh, sorry. One is just somebody made a comment.
Harold,
Bitwire hopes to launch in November in Miami, and that's exactly how they're banking crypto rails. So that's good to hear. Sorry.
Well, what crypto does is it sidesteps all of the complexity that you were just talking about, and it makes the bank in your phone, or it makes the phone your bank, I should say. And so therefore, so much easier to adopt and so much easier to operate and manage and track. I mean, from the government's point of view, it's still very transparent and trackable, but bypasses the entire complexity of the evolved payment system structure that you're talking about with 600 different options. That's got to rationalize at some point, and it's entirely possible it rationalizes on a crypto backbone.
Yeah, I kind of agree with all of you in there. Absolutely. I mean, for something as simple as sending money from A to B and have so many challenges along the way, so many different views or viewpoints and regulation and restrictions and so on. And then at the same time, the opposite view. So a lot of countries, what they're doing now is easing the entry barriers. So now it's easy to get a specific regulation. We saw that in Europe a lot. So a couple of, let's say, call it Baltic countries, they did that. They dropped and they improved to attract this type of technology companies trying to passport the licenses. So for me, the main challenge, and I can see from our, let's say, customer viewpoint, someone receiving money as a family remittance to support, to pay for education and food and so on, mainly at the banks. So the banks are a very old kind of institutions with a kind of a huge kind of a legacy infrastructures in there. Very difficult for them to move. It's an elephant. And then let the door open for so many startups, unicorns, people with great ideas trying to find solutions. So, but still, the main thing is you need to go through a bank so far. So obviously we are moving fast. Open banking is there, crypto. I love the concept. More than crypto, for me, the whole concept of blockchain technology from the industry perspective, where the main players in the market, the MTOs, put together this technology or concept for someone to send money from any provider in the world to any other provider, payout in the world, mobile wallet, cash, or home delivery. That's very powerful, and that's the future in there. But so far, the challenge is in there. So people is selling technology that were used in certain countries 20 years ago back in Latin America to serve this purpose. So imagine how bizarre is this kind of a situation. And we're talking about the potential of the new user, the digital embrace culture and talent, and then you have still this kind of old elephants. I hope we don't have any bankers in the audience.
I'm a former banker, but don't worry, I don't take offense. I'm mostly a technology entrepreneur, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, but there was a good example. The guys from Clip in the new unicorn of Mexico, everyone loved them and so on. They found a gap in there on this SME payments. That was just to simplify the process for everyone. The position, they have a value proposition. They sold them well, and they found this gap. Easy for any bank in Mexico to basically to plug in and put a team of 6 to work in there to develop this kind of a merchant payments, and they couldn't. And yeah,
that's correct. Actually, you know what? I was going to say that this question originally started we started talking about challenges. But what I'm hearing are a bunch of opportunities. So that's good. I mean, every one of those challenges, I mean, every single one of you and every one of these companies is actually trying to take one of those challenges and make it into an opportunity. So that's really good to hear. Good. And yeah, there might be some bankers, but come on, everybody knows this. You know, we're in between banking and technology. So, it's part of what's changing around the world.
Yeah, we need banks, obviously.
Okay. So would anybody like to add anything at the moment? Or, well, I have a few questions from the audience. Actually, I'm going to get on with the original questions that we had. Is the last one. It's a little bit longer. And then we will dedicate our time to the questions from the audience because there's plenty. So the question is, how is new technology being applied to solve these issues, right? Some examples are, for example, to increase adoption and inclusion, to reduce cost, for example, in transferring money around the world, to, changing habits like using cash, increasing security and reducing fraud, removing friction in international trade. I mean, it's not one. The idea is that everyone can add a little bit. Hi, Pavel. Can you hear us?
Yes, hi. Sorry, it's really bad line.
Don't worry.
And what's going on?
Don't worry. We were just going on to our next question. Precisely speaking about how is technology changing basically the opportunities and the challenges that we're seeing, including increasing adoption, reducing cost, reducing fraud, all those things that have been part of the financial system for a long time. But now we have a chance to do it differently. Would you like to give us your perspective on that?
Finally. Okay. Basically, the main things that we are doing is fraud prevention. And many years ago, we understood that if somebody will be able to remove remote fraud, they will be able significantly change, not just significantly, but completely change basically world of payments. And the biggest problem that we have at this moment is basically SIM swap fraud, when somebody replace mobile device or just SIM card, or when somebody use deepfakes video. And I believe that this is the biggest challenge that come to the market in Latin America, and basically in the world at all. So
solutions that are possible today, how are they different from what we had before? How is technology changing that?
Basically, technology can change it quite significantly if you were able to basically identify users of a transaction, definitely. Not just basically customer, but also who is a merchant. And for this, you need basically completely new infrastructure. Many companies are doing that, and you know that SWIFT is introduced now, just some new initiative which they will introduce in August this year. We are doing the same basically things, but in a different way. We use a lot of AI just to prevent remote fraud and to reduce cost of transactions.
Perfect. Actually, I love that example because artificial intelligence is very powerful, but also can be applied to many use cases, and this is one that's really great. Anybody else in terms of how is technology changing what was possible and the impact it's having? It could be related to the business you're in, or it can be something else if you like.
Yes, I mean, from our perspective, as I think we touched on many of these examples before in the remittance business. It's I always try to explain when people ask what you do, mainly people from the city, they try to understand what we do. I try to explain to them, this is about convenience. To have someone that needs to send money, and I can put this money on the other side of the world in less than 2 minutes. And even less than 2 minutes because it's 2 APIs, collecting all the orders sent, and then the payout, the people paying for this cash or whatever, to have it all these orders. So that happens in a fraction of the time that it used to happen before, or it happens with the banks. So you need to go through the banking system to send money to Colombia, for instance. It takes, I don't know, 2 days probably if you send after 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock or something like that. Take money from Mexico out to the UK. It takes similar amount of time in there, and the charges and the fees. So that's a good example of application of technology. But what I explain to people is when you are in the middle of a very remote rural area, in the middle of the Amazon, and you have a customer walking in saying, this is my receipt, my ID, I want to get this money from RIA for the payment that they send me from the UK. They still have this dial up. They need to connect to the internet. So someone walks in, go in there, see the transaction, yeah, everything okay, and pay the money or top up the mobile wallet or anything. So that's, for me, it's a real impact. The rest of the thing, obviously, everyone is in the same boat of technology, innovation, and so on. But it has a real impact into the bottom line of a person. That's why it's critical for us to understand different businesses, payments, everything is payments. But in this particular case of family remittance, it's just critical for them, because if you take this Maslow pyramid, this is a basic, you need to take this money and you need to trust the company. You're sending the money and you need the money to pay for education, food, and pay the rent, or just to pay for a COVID test or go to the hospital. Literally, it's to live or die if you have the money delivered 3 days later. And that's the beauty of that. So not overcomplicating things, not going basically reinventing the wheel, having something as simple as moving money from A to B in a much more efficient and convenient way. And that is reflected in you have more happy customers, you basically reduce the time, the cost, the middleman in the middle of everything. And then at the end of the day, it goes into the pocket of the beneficiary, of the people basically receiving these funds. So that's
perfect.
That's
perfect. That's really great. And actually, you highlighted a lot of the speed. What about cost? What could be the impact in costs? That's always an important one, especially when sending money across countries.
Absolutely. That's they're going to be in the future. The World Bank estimates that sending money with a bank costs you 10%, more or less, around that. Sending money with a money transfer company costs you around 6%, probably, something like that. The digital players, something around, I don't know, 2.5%. Fees plus foreign exchange. And then underneath these digital players, you have all the crypto platforms, B2Bs, or whatever you put in there. That is going to be. So if you want to have some level of business, I think we can move from this 10% into the 2% margin fee or cost of sending money across the world to the same destination. And it's a massive 8% reduction in that. So, and that's due to technology, because the person receiving money or the sending money understand the rate or the fee or simply the KYC that they do if they put X, Y, and Z on that end, and the people receiving, they need to somehow download some kind of application to make sure that everyone is happy, the verification of the ID to get the cash. And that's the whole thing. I mean, that's for the last, I don't know, probably 6-7 years, it's been happening. You can see now the impact. It used to be 1 or 2 players in the market for your remittance. Now they are, I don't know, in the UK, imagine, I don't know, this is the highest number of small payment institutions in the world. It's around 1,800 or something like that, regulated in such a small market proportionally. So imagine the niche competitor, the big competitor, the global competitor, the digital competitors, and so on, the wallets competitors. That's going to force everything to go down. But so far, I'm amazed because you still have people that don't understand technology and they're still using the traditional methods or using the banks to send money. And it's amazing. In 21st century sending country, where you have access to all the information in the world, it's still a good business for a lot of people, banks and other players in that space where you can use the digital channel, let's say, and cut quite a lot of the cost of your transfer.
We'll get there.
I think if I
anybody
can
else?
jump in there, I think trust has a lot to do with it. Trust and confidence on the sender and the recipient part. There's still a significant percentage of the population that just feel better dealing with a bank. And what you're seeing and what Jose just talked about is the price differential that trust commands. But I think that's an eroding confidence level or an eroding price point. I think you're exactly right. I think younger generations will come up. They'll be much more comfortable with sending money on their phone at the push of an app or a button. And as you correctly pointed out, Jose, cryptocurrency in particular and new technologies in general make it frictionless to move the money around. And you're going to see those price points fall well below even what I think what you said. And I'll bet you anything the price formula changes from a percentage of the value transferred to just a simple transaction fee over time as well. Imagine sending $100 for 10 cents cost or $1,000 for 10 cents cost, because in the digital world, it doesn't really make any difference the size of the transaction. And that will be really a fundamental shift in the pricing formula that a lot of companies won't be able to deal with.
Sure.
All good news, except for the banks, of course. Pavel, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I would like to say that our business model, we expect, will change all this very, very soon, because at this moment we offer cross-border payment with commission 0.2%. 0.2% plus we can introduce certain cap on basically transfer. This is one thing. And the second thing, for some of our clients, we just offer subscription-based payment. So basically you pay roughly £50 per month, and you have unlimited number of transactions and unlimited volume of these transactions. So basically that's it. And also regarding trust to banks, we also expect to change this attitude and to change basically this relationship in the near future. So you will see what happens soon.
That was the other impact. So we talked about speed, we talked about cost, but yeah, it also enables business models that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Great. Or what are your thoughts? What else is technology changing? I mean, we're all here because everybody's doing something that's enabled by technology, but from your standpoint, what would you say?
I think going back to what we talked about the speed and supporting business models that were unachievable before. So, we have a one API that caters for all of the markets that we cover, and that's 29 markets at the moment. And basically, we enable companies that had either to take a long time in order to penetrate the market, establishing a local entity, having boots on the ground. We enable all of them using one API, a cloud-based solution, to do everything without the need to open a local entity, without the need to have local boots on the ground. So basically, we are enabling the digital innovators of the world to offer their services in new locations. And basically, what I was mentioning before, the rise of the digital economy, the consumers are now much more aware than they were, 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. People now in Latin America, they want to use services like Uber, Netflix, etc. How are these people able to utilize this if these companies did not have the opportunity or the possibility to collect cash payments if that is the only thing that end user has available? So company like ours, we offer kind of the solutions to cater for these kind of business models in these locations. And by that, we're allowing the end user to enjoy a larger variety of products and services. And we're basically allowing a larger variety of merchants to tap into untapped markets and untapped share of markets in each one of the markets that we cover.
Good. Actually, would anybody like to add something, or do I just go to my next question, which I'm personally very interested in hearing your answers. So here it goes. we have a group of people from different perspectives and different geographies. What would you say are the biggest differences between how this is happening in emerging markets versus developed economies?
That's just tricky for me. We have a number of. I tend to compare and group things that happen, trends and situations, opportunities, and so on, by different countries, by territories. But in LATAM in particular, it's tricky. People try to associate Africa with LATAM, and in Africa they jump one step further. So they had no bank accounts, and they end up with 3 smartphones, and then was the technology in there biting in. So you have more, let's say, female users of the mobile phones. So you have a level in there of integration, and they understand much better the finances. And then it was easy when you have a mobile and a wallet, and you can connect product services in there and so on, to do it in there. And that didn't happen in any other, let's call it, developed economy in the world at all. And so that was a massive
leapfrogging, right? That they did in Africa.
Yeah, in Africa, Kenya is a good example, but there are many of them. So the mobile wallets option that you have, you can send money to your cash pickup, or you can send money to your mobile wallet, and then you plug any other kind of a provider into this mobile wallet. So that's the beauty of that. That happened probably 7 years ago, and that was a collaboration between a kind of a telecom company and the government. And it worked because it helped the government to, let's say, onboard, or at least to create a number of users, and they use telecom companies really to onboard a lot of potential customers or taxpayers for governments through that. But the LATAM was different. LATAM is staying there always with this growth, and we discussed the opportunities. The market is there. I think the power of this talent that we have right now is still there. I remember probably 10 years ago, Chile, the Chilean government had this initiative and came to the UK and gave a number of opportunities to talent companies, startup from the UK to go back to Chile, and they will provide everything. They give you some mentoring, office, and funding in there. And I thought that was fantastic. I said, wow, so
remember that, yeah.
So ahead of the game. But then compare everything, put everything in there, develop economies or not. Every single country is so difficult to measure, to compare with others. But as a broad thing, this element of Africa versus LATAM, and how basically you progressively have more people with bank accounts in LATAM. And that was a phase that we completely jumped in the African continent, the majority of Africa. That was amazing. But that's one of the big things that happen in there. So everything is so localized that what happened with between Brazil, Mexico, and Chile, Ecuador, Peru, nothing. I mean, everyone has their own kind of a growth in there and develop towards something that I'm pretty sure is going to fit very well the country or the population or the people there. So
okay, amazing. That's interesting. Good.
So an answer that didn't answer your question, but yeah, I give you a lot of.
No, it's very good. It's very good, precisely because the question was about how does all these things and the technologies are available. The adoption, we have COVID all over the world, and all those things. Even then, it's being adopted differently in different places.
And I give you a quick example. Something that we are very interested in, we are working always, is how maybe obviously access to finance, microfinance, and banks. Again, so how you can use the data that we have on the remittance business to apply this credit score for a bank in LATAM, any country, can use that as a way to, let's call it collateral from the person asking for investment into the business.
So that's probably a more stable source of income than many others in the informal economy in places like Mexico.
For many years, and that's happening, really. You can quantify that. You have an element of risk in there. You know the average sending amounts, where the money goes. So that type of element, this is a massive development in terms of if someone click and develop something like that at a global level in a kind of, let's call it economy, that will be fantastic. It really will help really to have more people, more access to microfinance, bank loans, credit cards, and so on. So, but that, you can never compare that with a developed country. That will never occur in any other country here. So this element is quite special.
Perfect. Any other answers? Anybody else would like to talk about how they have seen these, like what these changes in payments? How are they being applied differently in emerging countries or developed economies?
Yeah, so happy to take that from my side. Obviously, emerging markets in general, and I'm not just speaking on LATAM, they represent 1/3 of the world's GDP with, high growth of e-commerce. We're talking about 30% and even more in these markets. I think that in most developed markets, you're not seeing these kind of levels of growth. It's extremely challenging to do that. So for companies to grow significantly, emerging market LATAM is a great opportunity for them to conquer. The key challenge that was there for many years were the barriers to entry. It was extremely difficult to go into the country, be linked to the local acquiring system, make sure that you get all the nuance and all the nitty-gritty details of the specific payment landscape in each one of the markets that you do that. And I think that now, using technology, these things are extremely changing. And we're talking about significant opportunity over there. We're talking about $1.2 trillion of opportunity just in the 29 markets that we are covering. So obviously, there's a huge opportunity from a point of view of the emerging markets and kind of like the consumers, the consumer behavior in the emerging market is demanding what the end consumer in developed markets is already familiar with and is happy with. So making kind of that bridge, I think it's vital for companies to grow significantly.
That is really good. Harold, Pavel, any thoughts on this issue, emerging markets and developed economies, how this is being adopted differently?
Yeah, I think you made some really good points there, and I won't cover them again, but I would say that you are going to see leapfrogs. You're already seeing it in places like Nigeria, where the per capita adoption of cryptocurrency, for example, is one of the highest in the world. Other areas of Africa will just simply bypass the banking infrastructure because the banking infrastructure will never reach those places where people live. The same is true in India. I did a tremendous amount of work in India, and banks just simply couldn't get to the population, 2/3 of which is rural in India. So to the extent you have that kind of population dispersion in Brazil and Mexico, the banking footprint is just too expensive to service those people. So the bank will be on the phone as people get better bandwidth, as they learn to trust and have confidence and operate the technology properly. You're going to see a wholesale shift. So I think it's honestly a very exciting time to be in that space.
Great. Pavel? Oh. Who's that?
You're muted.
Yes.
Muted. I'm sure you were saying something fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, sorry, I couldn't find the bottom in that. No, I wanted to do something very interesting, Harold, in India. What we saw in India, we considered that, let's say, a receiving country, let's say, in terms of remittances, and happening in many other countries. But then when you send money there, you have a massive market from India outside other countries, basically neighborhoods. And that happens in LATAM quite a lot. So there's no money coming from Europe or from the US into a particular country in LATAM. You have countries in Latin America sending to other countries. So you always have a poorest country or a poorer country down the line in there. And it's amazing, the dynamics. And that's the type of elements that technology, crypto that we were talking here, that you have a massive impact in there. Because we assume that we send money to one country and that's it. But sending money from this country, so Nigeria, Ghana is a good example. Ghana sends money to Benin. Yeah. This is door and even poorer than Ghana. This is one of the things that you never forecast because you send money one way, you expect to have this operation going on the other way. But
yeah,
that's amazing.
You are exactly correct. And I witnessed it in India. I spent 8 years as CEO of a money transfer company in India. And we saw a tremendous amount of cross-border traffic to Nepal, Bhutan, even China, the Seychelles, Sri Lanka, Singapore, and even the United States. As wealthier Indians sent their kids to the United States to be educated, they were sending money that way as well. So, people always talk about India as a $70 billion a year inbound remittance market, and that's true. But the outbound remittance market was absolutely significant. I don't think anybody's really measuring it in a way that is meaningful, but you couldn't be more correct. And you're going to see markets and sub-markets like that emerge as technology penetrates these different jurisdictions. I'm sure the same would be true today in LATAM with Colombia sending money back to Venezuela as an example. And I really I want to go back to the El Salvador example. Dollarization took hold in some LATAM economies 20 years ago. It's worked pretty well. I think a digitization of those economies as we go forward, notwithstanding the problems of volatility and settlement time and Bitcoin and so on, I think that's just a really interesting development because it erodes the ability of that country to go back to a self-managed currency. They don't anymore have a central bank. They don't have all the mechanisms in place to manage it now. They basically surrendered their sovereignty to this decentralized entity, and I don't know that there's a going back on that. And so I just think the El Salvador example is going to be absolutely fascinating to watch, and I will not be surprised if others move in the same direction. Ecuador is an example. Venezuela should absolutely go there, but won't, I'm sure, for political reasons. But I just think that's a really interesting trend line.
I was about to ask about El Salvador precisely, and some of the members of the audience were asking about that. Actually, that's really interesting. Like I said, it's going to be a good experiment to see how a lot of the things we're discussing advance in an economy that's working with Bitcoin. Sorry, we're almost running out of time, and I just wanted to give Pavel a chance to answer as well in terms of any differences that you're seeing in how all this is happening in emerging economies versus developed markets, or anything else you would like to add. You're on mute.
No.
Pavel, we cannot hear you. You're on mute.
Still on mute over there. Hugo, I'm happy to just add one more comment in relation to remittance, as we were talking about that. We're partnered with the Azimo and remittance company, and just talking about the remittance, we see tremendous flow of remittance from Europe to Colombia. We're talking about around 2% of the equivalent of the GDP coming from immigrants basically to Europe, sending money back to Colombia. And in the same way, we're also seeing Venezuelans going and then sending money from Colombia and to other countries as well. I think that definitely technology impacts on that. And going back to what was mentioned before, the element of trust is definitely key, and definitely is something that is in the eyes of the end consumers. And I think that with the emergence of more and more companies that are doing that, the market is being educated. The market is being educated, and they are more familiar with that, and they are more keen on utilizing new and better methods of doing that.
Absolutely. And I want to share, we just published a white paper today for RIA. If you can download from the website, I'm not selling my own book, but I think it's very relevant because it's lots of data about that. So actually, I was checking around before the call, just in case you ask me some tricky questions. So, but absolutely amazing data in there. And it talks about El Salvador and the contribution to the GDP for remittance and for RIA and so on. It's very interesting data. So I will share the link later if anyone wants to. It's a free PDF anyway, you can download.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Yeah, I mean, you've got almost 20% of the entire population of El Salvador living in the United States, right? So you're going to have a huge digital remittance corridor going on there. It's going to be really interesting.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. It's just that, and even in the case of RIA, we are a big contributor to in terms of remittances there, but we are the largest employers as well. So the back offices, rather than moving to India, we move into El Salvador. We have a large operation in El Salvador as well. So it's the double contribution to the economy, not only sending money in there, but be one of the largest employers in there. And they cover worldwide. So it's an amazing story, but absolutely.
Wow. Actually, yeah, the impression I get is there's lots of these things. There's challenges, there's opportunities. But my overall comment would be, we will get there, and if we don't, it won't be for lack of trying. There's lots of people doing this. I mean, these great companies, like every one of you is doing something. Everyone is doing their bit to make this happen. Yeah. We're running out of time. I just wanted to see if we wanted to get some final words in from Pavel, but I think we're having some technical difficulties. We cannot hear you, Pavel, at the moment. Oh God, yeah, I'm sorry. Some technical stuff. Yeah, no, Pavel is telling me on the chat that yeah, he's it seems to be working on his end, but for some reason we cannot hear him. Oh, I'm very sorry. If you want to, if there's anything you want to write down that I can mention, Pavel, I'll do that. In the meantime, oh my God, I can't believe 1 hour has gone by already. I would like to thank everyone for being here, all the panelists, all the members of the audience. These are some really interesting questions. Actually, when I heard that I was going to be the moderator on this panel, I thought, oh, come on, I won't get to talk. But actually, it's much better to just listen to all these answers from everyone, right? I'm really happy to have been part of this. And what we would like to do is now invite you to the main stage, participants and panel members. It's on the left side of your screen. It should be there. I think there is a 5-minute break, and then there's more panels coming up. There's one calling about the impact of regulation of fintech companies in LATAM in the UK in about 5 minutes. But so thank you very much, everyone. It was great having you here. And well, we're open in the comments and on social media in case anybody wants to continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you
very much, Hugo.
Thank you.